Yes, Roscoe, today Sydney salutes all the bushfire heroes with a ticker tape parade starting here at the Opera House. The parade will move up George Street to the Town Hall, where Bushfire Services Chief Phil Koberberg will accept the key to the city on behalf of all the volunteers who fought.
And we'll have full coverage of the parade shortly, but first, some time to reflect on some of the events that prompted it. Here's reporter Brady Hall.
If we only lose 2,000 or 3,000 houses, we'll be doing very well.
Not since the Second World War has there been such panic in the streets of Sydney. From every state and territory, volunteers poured into New South Wales. When it wasn't enough, the Defence Forces were called in.
Hey, if you're in that situation, get yourself as close to the ground and put something over your head.
Sydney was alight, circled from the west, the north, the south.
Pull out if it's too hot, Scotty, you hear?
In the north, the firestorm devoured densely populated suburbs, Elanora, Warriewood, Narrabeen.
Behind me, a fire truck has even caught fire.
An additional problem around here can be these high tension wires. You can see the flames are near them, but they don't.
And below, Sydney is burning. The council shires of Warringah and Pittwater. Below there is Elanora, and we can see one home has just gone up in flames just below us, off the Wakehurst Parkway. This is Elanora live.
No, it's unbelievable. We thought that the storm 3 years ago bad. This is crazy.
The onslaught so powerful, so sudden, it defied the valiant efforts of fire crews to control it.
What can you do?
You can't. Okay. All you can do is try your best, right? It's bloody impossible. It really is.
We got 6 homes here. The board's got 2 alike down there.
Yeah.
It moved closer to the heart of the city, Turramurra, Lane Cove, just kilometres from the harbour bridge.
Can everyone evacuate their homes and leave this street immediately?
From the south, it engulfed lives, whole national parks, entire streets. From the fiery flora, the frightened fauna. From the west, the blue mountains were soon the blackened ones. 40-metre flames, one by one, homes caught alight.
And don't be afraid of the dark.
We were helplessly overwhelmed, and in the end, for many, we were left with nothing but memories.
These guys are the heroes.
And you'll never
Thanks very much, Brady, and welcome again, everybody, to what's turning out to be an absolutely joyous and emotional day, not only for the people of Sydney, but in many respects for the people of Australia. From where we sit above George Street, there isn't a doubt in the world that Sydney has opened its heart this afternoon to these people, and they are saying thank you in the best way they know how. Let the picture tell the story. Tracy, a fantastic sight.
Absolutely fabulous atmosphere here, Roscoe. Thousands of people as far as the eyes can see. Lining George Street. We're getting a bit of a salute here ourselves from some of these terrific firefighters who are obviously revelling in the attention here today.
They are indeed. In fact, the group we've just been looking at is from the Sutherland Shire, where, of course, the devastation was enormous. Many, many homes lost, terrible property damage, and great personal losses as well. There they are now, the town cry ahead of them, the men of the Sutherland firefighters, and listen to the accolade they're getting.
The Sutherland Bushfire Organisation has 13 bushfire brigades, more than 500 volunteer members, and I guess that was the thing that underlined this firefight, was that most of the people who fought were volunteers. They gave up their private time. In a couple of cases, they gave up their honeymoons to come in and fight the fires. It was a tremendous effort.
That's right, and you'll notice in some of the pictures we're seeing now and have just seen, they brought their kids along as well. Brought the whole family.
So they should.
Absolutely. Well done. It's difficult to estimate numbers, Tracy, but in parts of George Street, the crowds are certainly 5 and 6 thick. I'd say probably up to 30, 40, maybe even 1,000, maybe even more.
I'm useless at numbers, but you can certainly see them lining the footpaths. In some parts, there's no footpath left.
And here comes the ticker tape, raining down on these men and women who have done so much to save a city and indeed a state.
Very enthusiastic bombardment of ticker tape.
And aren't they loving it?
In fact, we saw one fellow before had picked up a great wad of it and shoved it under his hat. He'd given himself a ticker tape hairdo. He was making the most of it.
One of the wags of the show. I dare say we'll see a few more of those before it's over.
I don't doubt it.
So the parade is moving fairly briskly along George Street up towards the town hall, where they're to be presented with the keys to the city by Sydney's Lord Mayor. You can probably hear the sirens in the background. Fortunately, this time, they're not sounding at any kind of alarm, more an expression of joy.
And on that note, we'll take a break. We will be back with more of Sydney's salute to the bushfire heroes in just a few moments. Welcome back to this special broadcast, this coverage of the Sydney salute to the bushfire heroes. And what a salute it is. You can probably hear it in the background. The people of Sydney opening their hearts to these men and women who fought so bravely just a couple of weeks ago.
Tracy, aren't they having a ball?
They are loving it.
Some of the men we've just seen, the men and women we've just seen, are members of the Warringah Bushfire Brigades, and that was another area of Sydney, to Sydney's north, where there was tremendous devastation and loss of property.
Yeah.
But they're looking pretty happy on it today.
Now, passing us now is the Hornsby Fire Brigade, and I'm not sure if we can see the banner carrier for Hornsby, but she is 16-year-old Sharon Tickell. Trying to find her there. But Sharon's got a pretty extraordinary story. She is a ranger guide. She joined the bush firefighting service as a volunteer as part of her ranger guide qualification just in October, and a few weeks later she found herself in the thick of it. Pretty remarkable effort for a 16-year-old girl.
Tracy.
Sharon Tickell. Let's take our hats off to Sharon.
Well done, Sharon. She got more than she bargained for at 16.
She certainly did.
New South Wales Mounted Police passing the...
Here we have the Hawkesbury City Bushfire Brigades. They too had an enormous job cut out for them, with the fires that cut the main northern freeway leading out of Sydney and caused extensive damage in the Hawkesbury-Gosford areas. In fact, when one looks at the statistics, one realises just how deserving these men and women are of the accolades they're receiving today. 190 houses destroyed, 150 damaged, 800,000 hectares of bushland burnt out, and so it goes on. What a job they did.
Fantastic job. And Roscoe, we have Brady Halls actually down there in the thick of it. Brady, can you hear us?
I can just hear you, Tracy. I'm down at Martin Place. That's the very heart of Sydney, where the lunchtime crowds, the lunchtime workers, have swollen the crowds here to about 10 deep. And sprinkled among them are people like John and Val Dixon from Lane Cove. Now, these two people here are very appreciative because they were amongst the people whose homes were in peril of being lost. I understand you're very appreciative for that, Val.
Very appreciative. Yes, we have a double interest here today. Our son is in the state emergency services, and they were the ones that were responsible for us evacuating us out of our home.
And John, no damage to the home at all?
No, we were very lucky. We actually had the Yass Fire Brigade who saved our places, so that was amazing. You know, the people come that far and save
the
our...
southwest of New South Wales,
That's
all the way up to Lane Cove.
All the way up to Lane Cove, yes, to save our house. It was marvellous.
Well done. Well, I'll let you carry on cheering and clapping and waving and hope to spot your son.
Thank you.
Okay, Tracy, back to you then.
Thank you, Brady. We're being passed now by the Blacksland Ridge Bushfire Brigade. In front of them, Grosvale.
Bringing up the rear, the Wallandilly Fire Brigades also did a tremendous job. And Tracy, I think what a lot of people overlook in the wake of the fires, once the immediate threat and the drama has passed, is that these people have laid their lives on the line in a bid to do what they did. And 99% of them are volunteers. It really is quite an amazing feat they've achieved.
That's right. And of course, they're all giving up their time at work here today. Their employers have been asked to be lenient, and I don't think there'd be an employer in the state who would dare not be, probably, on a day like today.
There's the Ku-ring-gai Bushfire Brigade coming past us right now.
And they really... This is Hornsby actually going past our commentary position, and they're making a bit of a racket.
Well, they can make as much noise as they like today. It's their day.
It's their day. Ku-ring-gai were, of course, right in the thick of it, in the north of Sydney. Fires impacted on Brooklyn, Cowan, West Pymble, Canoelands. Have I said that rightly? Canoelands?
That's it.
Forest Glen, Glenorrey, St Ives and Wiseman's Ferry. 11 houses destroyed in that area.
The fires were particularly bad in that area, as they were in the Hornsby and Ku-ring-gai areas right through there. It was all very badly affected. There go the sirens again. It's wonderful to see the number of school children here today, Tracy, enjoying what is basically the end of their school holiday. What a high note to go out on.
Good experience to bring them along and have them have a look at something like this.
Absolutely.
I think as someone commented to me during the fire crisis, as tragic as it was, and there's no doubt it was, 4 people died, and we shouldn't forget that. But it really did bring Australia together as a community.
It's certainly done that, and it's also taught us a lot of lessons about togetherness that we shouldn't forget too quickly.
That's right. Perhaps some statistics here, so that you know exactly, just exactly what these people were up against. There were 800 fires in New South Wales from late December 1993 until mid-January this year. I guess they really started after New Year, but they burned for a very long time.
And doesn't that statistic speak volumes about what these men and women had to face? 800 fires in that short period. Beside our commentary position now, not far behind the Navy band, are the petrol tankers, which fulfilled a very unusual role during the fires.
That's right. They were actually, these were legitimate petrol tankers that were washed out pretty thoroughly, you can be sure, and refilled with water and used to fill the fire tankers.
That's right.
To help fight the fires.
An unusual role, just as well they washed them out well, as you said. Okay, we'll take a break now, and we'll be back with more of Sydney's salute to the bushfire heroes shortly. Well, Tracy, there's not a doubt in the world that the firefighters themselves are the stars of this show, but there were so many other auxiliary services or support services that certainly shouldn't go unnoticed, and they're here before us right now.
We've been watching a few of them go by. In fact, so many of them go by. We shouldn't forget them. The Defence Forces, the police, of course, who performed an extraordinary task. They were there helping with evacuations. They were there manning roadblocks. New South Wales Fire Brigades, who are, of course, the more urban firefighting units, if you like, rather than the rural bush firefighting units, and they got involved, as we all know, towards the end when the fires got so very close to the city of Sydney.
That's right, and the SES too. What a job they've done, and there's only a small representative group of the SES here today. They're not hard to pick because of their their orange uniforms, if you like. But the reason there's only a small group here today is that most of them, of course, are at work.
That's right.
Because they're all volunteers, and they do a wonderful job. There's a few of them waiting at us now.
They really are fabulous, the State Emergency Service. You really couldn't afford to give them a day off to come to the parade because I think the city had just about stopped without them.
Exactly, and the AMBOs too. I mean, what a job they do. The evacuations in which they were involved were just wonderful. I mean, without them, many elderly people who were terrified by the fires would have been far worse off than they actually were, because the ambulance went in there, evacuated them quietly, gave them moral support and rehoused them until the danger had passed.
That's right. There were hundreds of people not only evacuated, elderly and disabled people, but there were also hundreds of people treated for injuries. They fell off roofs. They were there fighting their fires, trying to save their houses. There was, of course, the inevitable smoke inhalation problems. And the ambulance service was there the whole way through. Cancelled their leave, cancelled their days off. They were doing 12 and 14-hour shifts. Pretty extraordinary effort, and they deserve all the thanks that they're getting here today.
They do indeed.
Of course, we're seeing the State Emergency Services is good. We're seeing a slightly larger contingent of the SES now. And we're calling this Sydney's salute to the bushfire heroes, but really, I think it's Australia's salute to these men and women. It's being held in Sydney for obvious reasons, but this is Australia's chance to say thank you.
Yes, that's true. And in fact, you know, the attention of the whole country was focused on Sydney and New South Wales during these appalling fires. So I'm sure that everybody watching this would agree that every tribute and every accolade seen and heard here today is very well deserved.
Now, Roscoe, Brady's still down there, mixing it with the best of them on the street. Brady, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Tracy. We on now, are we?
You are.
I tell you what, we're going to need a mighty big broom down here to do some cleaning up afterwards. I just want to talk...
You'll be helping, won't you, Brad?
Yeah, I'll be here for a year. I want to talk to some of the folks. If we can just turn around here. Where were the people from Bankstown? That's southwest of Sydney. These are the SES guys and women who have worked very hard. And things like, what were you doing during the bushfires?
Mainly clean up and trees and sorts of stuff like that.
A lot of evacuations and things?
Yeah, we did waterfall mainly.
Right. Actually, how difficult, what was the most memorable thing that you can recall during the fires?
Devastation down at Denali and Como.
That's the service station that went up in flames?
Yeah, all sorts. There's the main houses and all that for people around there.
Yeah. And that's where you were concentrated with your efforts?
Oh, most of it was, yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, good luck and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, folks.
Thanks, Brady. And what a great sight it is from up here in our position, Roscoe.
It is indeed, and these SES people are still filing past us from all over the state.
It's worth noting that there is a contingent here representative of all of the interstate bushfire fighting services who came and gave their time so generously, so enthusiastically and so bravely, I might add, during these fires. They'll reach us soon, and we'll introduce you to them when they get here.
And I wonder if we can just get a shot of these SES people. They're pretty representative of most of Sydney's suburbs. There you go. Botany, Cadbury, Campbelltown. The whole Sydney metropolitan area. I guess that's what it is. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
It's a little bit disorganised, but never mind. They were organised when it counted. And we've got the National 9 News helicopter, of course, hovering above. It's a terrific sight along George Street.
Here's another indication, if we can get a shot of it, of the breadth of the services that SES has to offer. There's one of their boats, which is dual-purpose role in rescue work and evacuation and all that type of thing. Other emergency vehicles, flood rescue.
And there were some great stories to be told during the bushfires of the role that boats played, especially, I suppose, or at least in one occasion up around the north of Sydney, someone from the local surf rescue service donated their rubber duckies to ferry firefighters across the waters around Pittwater. Because, of course, highways were blocked and bridges were burned and all sorts of terrible things happened. So the boats came into play, and the St Vincent de Paul had a terrific story to tell about one of the yacht clubs too.
Yes, necessity is the mother of invention, I think.
That's what they say. When the M3, or is it the M3 or the F3?
F3.
The F3 was blocked north of Sydney. The St Vincent de Paul put out a call to try and get mattresses and blankets into the people who were stranded along the highway. And they couldn't get up there, so the local yacht club ferried them up there. Thousands of blankets and mattresses.
And of course, all these services, Tracy, have played a major role in assisting the motorists who were stranded on the same F3 for days at a time in terrible conditions. Extremely uncomfortable. They couldn't go forward, they couldn't go back, and these services came in and provided food for them, blankets. They evacuated many of the people who may have been frail or ill, and even the police pitched in and helped organise a cricket match at one stage to break some of the boredom.
The proprietor of the Hornsby Cinema opened up and played Sister Act 2 for them all.
Yes, that's right. So it really was a case of all pulled together, and didn't they do it well? They
certainly did. We'll take a break now and we'll be back with more of Sydney's salute to the bushfire heroes in just a couple of moments.
Well, Tracy, they say where there's a crisis, you'll find a salvo. And that was never truer than in this bushfire crisis. Well done, salvos. There they are.
There are a lot of people who have a great deal to thank the Salvation Army for after these bushfires. They really got to it. And I guess primarily their task was to feed people, and boy, did they feed them. They fed the bushfire fighters, they fed the people who were stuck on freeways, they fed the evacuees, they provided counselling and comfort. They deserve our thanks, and they're getting it today.
They are indeed. So now the salvos and the rest of the parade is moving down towards the Sydney Town Hall, and that's where they're going to receive the keys of the city and be officially thanked for the tremendous job they've done throughout this crisis.
That's right. The Lord Mayor of Sydney, Frank Sartor, will greet virtually everybody in a ceremony in just a few moments. Down at the Town Hall, he will provide the keys to the city to Bushfire Services Commissioner Phil Koperberg, who I suppose was the steering wheel or the rudder, if you like, on the whole effort. And Mr. Koperberg will accept the keys on behalf of these many thousands of terrific men and women.
So out of tragedy and out of crisis, today has come great joy. It has been a joyous day and a very emotional day.
A great honour to be a part of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there we're going to leave you. Thank you very much for being part of the telecast. Thanks for your time. And from Ian Ross.
And Tracy Grimshaw.
Bye for now.
Goodbye.
Truck.
You feeling proud?
Yes, and I'm sure all the men are feeling proud as well. You have to thank the public as well.
Your voice still sounds a bit croaky.
Yeah.
It's going to come right?
Yes, definitely. Hopefully soon.
Some of the biggest cheers today have been for the firefighters who came from interstate. These guys are from Victoria. What do you think about the reception today?
Absolutely wonderful.
To make it all worthwhile?
Oh, yes, very much so.
From all states and territories, the firefighters had rallied to support New South Wales. A small group from each was flown in so Sydney could say thank you to them too. Again today, we were to hear that between 2,000 and 3,000 homes had been threatened. It was no exaggeration, and it was only the skills and the courage of these men and women that prevented the threat from becoming reality.
Every agency involved has come of age. It's been a fabulous team effort. It's been led well, but it couldn't have been done without the people themselves.
Before the formal thank you at the Town Hall, a minute's silence to remember the 4 who died during that terrible week. 2 firefighters, 2 homeowners. Lord Mayor Frank Sartor said the community was in debt to everyone who'd fought the fires.
I didn't realise the extent of this effort until I saw you all come past today, and you're only a representative sample.
He then handed the symbolic keys to the city to Bushfire Commissioner Phil Koperberg, a bushfire volunteer for 25 years, who described this January as one of the most remarkable firefighting efforts of all time.
I am indeed honoured to be part of your organisation, and I salute you all.
John.
What a great feat. Elaine, I just want you to tell us what it felt like out there today.
Words fail me. It's something that I've never experienced before.
I reckon it's great. We're out there to help the public, and that's what we're here for.
Jan, sometimes the people at home have been overlooked during this bushfire. You've been stuck at home without a great deal of communication. What goes through your mind?
You wonder whether they'll actually ever get injured, but I always think that Paul's very careful and he doesn't take risks, so he puts himself first. Sort of, if the fire has to go through, then it has to go through, and I just feel confident that he wouldn't put himself at risk.
Charlie, was Pa Bear good in the fires? Is he a good firefighter?
Yes.
Was he good in the parade today?
Yes.
One more. No, use the captain's hat.
That's better.
That's more like it.
Oh, we play a good role. We're out there with men, doing everything that, we can and to our capabilities. Like, we can't carry a backpack. We have to be careful when we go to the loo.
Good on you, thanks a lot.
He's still got the camera on.
The good looking bloke from this
Looks
side.
better on you. Yeah, it was good to catch up with some good friends we've made over the last month here around Sydney. Now, Juanita, I hear it was also a day to remember for...
They risked their lives, facing the biggest emergency ever to hit New South Wales. 3,000 volunteer firefighters and representatives of all emergency services marched from the Opera House to Town Hall.
Right from Bangor, and they saved our streets and our houses, and it was just great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sydney says thank you to the New South Wales firefighters! Hooray!
The proud smiles of the fire heroes said it all.
Eurobadella.
It was very emotional, and it made you feel proud.
There are thousands of others who couldn't take part today, but the volunteers and brigades from interstate are represented by this group of 100 firefighters.
We know that if we're in strife, they just come at the drop of a hat, and, we feel the same.
2 firefighters lost their lives in the battle. Many others were injured. Among those marching today, Greg Warner, hit by a fireball in the Blue Mountains as he saved a woman's life, nearly costing him his own.
Oh, it's good. It's good to know that a lot of people still think of what everyone else has done, all the fire people have done.
At the Town Hall, Bushfire Services Commissioner Phil Koperberg was presented with the keys to the city.
To our firefighters and supporting volunteers, in appreciation of their courage and dedication in fighting the bushfires of January 1994. Phil, congratulations.
Then a minute's silence for those who lost their lives. And a final tribute from the bushfire boss.
And I'll salute you all.
Steve Barnes, 7 Nightly News.
Sydney says thank you.
The recent bushfire devastation left more than a physical scar on Sydney. Today, tens of thousands turned out as a sign of appreciation.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Like many in the crowd, Susan Schofield and Jennifer Frode owe their lives and their homes to these heroes.
I'm just so happy and so grateful. I think they just did absolutely fantastic job.
Very frightening experience, and it makes you proud to be Australian.
For those who battled the blazes, today's thank you parade was an emotional, at times overwhelming experience, a fitting tribute to those men and women who risked so much.
Make you proud to be a firefighter.
Make you proud to wear this uniform.
We really owe a debt of appreciation to all of these people. They indeed are heroes.
Firefighters from as far away as Western Australia took part in today's parade. Along with New South Wales colleagues, they marched up George Street for a reception at the Town Hall. For the fire's 4 victims, a silent tribute.
When our homes and lives were threatened by fire, you answered the call. No one can deny that Australian mateship is alive and well.
With that, the Lord Mayor then handed Chief Firefighter Phil Koperberg the keys to the city. Volunteer firefighting can be a thankless task. Today, the debt was finally repaid.
I am indeed honoured to be part of your organisation, and I salute you all.
Sharon Gadella, National 9 News.
Police Commissioner Tony Lauer has...
House, Titch, Lurch and the boys from Loftus would rather have spent the day at home. And here they were, steering back to the scene of the crime. Not as heroes basking in the glory, but trying again to deal with memories, remorse and guilt.
Oh, disappointment. Everyone sort of were upset that they couldn't do more.
87 homes were lost on their patch that Saturday. The fire roared into Como and Janali with such fury, thousands more may have been lost but for these angels in yellow overalls. But standing among the ashes today, honour and glory was the last thing on their minds.
We're not heroes. In our eyes, we're not heroes. We're just doing the job. The job had to be done, so we got in and did it.
In town, they merged with the sea of like-minded souls, each working on memories of fire madness.
Just leaving everything and just getting out as quick as they can, and just the despair of all the people.
Appreciative for sure, but embarrassed and bewildered by all the fuss. Today, not clouds of smoke and showers of red-hot ash, but storms of ticker tapes and public admiration. They may not think they deserve it, but Sydney certainly does. But by the end of an hour's glory, the mood began to lift. At least enough to say thanks for saying thanks.
Oh, I'm not a hero, but we just did our job and, you know, we're proud of it.
John Collis, National 9.
Here's a good example. Emma Rossi reporting.
Oh, well, look, just put them back there for the moment. We'll just walk over here and see what we can see. Oh, knife and fork. Good, thank you.
It was their home for 10 years, and in just a few minutes, it was
Let's see what else we can see. Stay close to me now.
But this is one family that's not about to let go of their Aussie dream.
Come on, boys, this way. Let's go into the bedroom, see what we can see. This is Maddie's bedroom. Come on, Matthew.
Phil and Jenny O'Regan, like so many other bushfire victims, still coming to terms with what happened.
Yes. Until we actually saw the place, we still thought that there might be something remaining. And the children thought there might be some of their toys still in the house. But of course, when we got to the rubble that remained, there was nothing there.
January the 8th, fire sweeps through Como and Janali in Sydney South. Only a few hours earlier, Jenny had taken sons Russell and Matthew to safety.
I told him, no heroics, please. As I left, I said, you leave as soon as you see any flames.
What I can only describe as this arc, crescent, pillar of fire came roaring out of the gully and without so much as pausing, arced straight across the road and into the first of the house.
Phil only just managed to get away. A close call. A neighbour died after she was trapped in the firestorm.
I've seen the face of the enemy and I think I can now deal with that situation. Will not be taken so much by surprise. I mean, it was an absolute surprise to us.
The only things they managed to save, a few clothes and these family photo albums.
What things now do you really miss, do you wish you'd taken?
Our music. All our music that we've accumulated over the years. We had music videos, didn't we? We had videos of the children when they were little. We missed them.
Photo albums are only, they might be the most important thing, but they're only part of your history. If you've been in a house for any length of time, really your whole house is your history or contains.
The council will demolish what remains of that house, but before the bulldozers move in, a final check.
Like the shovel, that's lost the handle, but the rest of it's not too bad.
You feel this need to pick up the strange forms and pieces that you see around you, just to hang on to something from your old house.
Right. I've sighted it on the block, a little bit forward, so try and get your views down the valley.
The O'Regans are renting a house until their new home is built. Fortunately, they were fully insured. It could have been far worse.
We have never had contents insurance over all our 15 years of marriage, and coming up towards Christmas, I just felt this sense of urgency about getting it done, and so I paid for them on the Friday, and the house burnt down on the Saturday.
But for the O'Regans, what's been so important is the incredible support they've had, offers of accommodation and practical help, some from complete strangers.
But also, the aftermath has, I think, gone pretty well all the way to restoring our faith in the future and in humanity and in general. And I think, cautiously, that the rest of this year will be a good year.
Emma Rossi there, and good luck to all those families trying to rebuild
Streets today to pay tribute to the heroes who battled the bushfires. It's the first time the diverse firefighting force has been gathered in one place, and 50,000 people turned out for a fitting thank you.
2 weeks after the crisis, and the vast resources involved in fighting the New South Wales fires came together from across the country.
Around the Hawkesbury area, Bowen Mountain, Currajong Heights.
From Victoria, down around near Ballarat.
But the excitement of the firefighters was upstaged by the estimated 50,000 people who turned out to thank them.
How's it feel? A bit embarrassing in a way. What's embarrassing about it? That all these people should come out for us.
From taxi drivers to tankers to emergency services, all involved in the effort were represented.
64 different groups have joined in the parade up George Street, and it seems that Sydney-siders from all over the cities have emptied these buildings to cheer them on.
This man came to thank those who saved his house on Sydney's northern beaches.
We got evacuated twice.
Filled with pride as he drove past, this young volunteer was one of them. He still remembers vividly.
A little bit scared now and then, but no. If you're with a good group of people.
At Sydney Town Hall, the parade ended and the mood changed.
We are collectively proud and humbled by the fact that amongst us were two people who were prepared on behalf of the community to pay the ultimate sacrifice.
In their memory, a minute's silence. And in recognition of the heroic efforts of all involved,
I would now like to present the keys of the city to Phil Koperberg.
Tonight, volunteers and workers are continuing the celebration. It's the other side of a comradeship that earlier this month helped save life and property in New South Wales.
State Treasury
New South Wales at the new year will be hundreds of homes lost, 4 people killed. And the most horrifying thing of all, as many as half of the fires appear to have been deliberately lit. So who are the firebugs and why do they do it? Tonight, you'll hear from one of the worst, a man who's been to jail for arson and admits to starting more than a dozen bushfires.
Is fire your friend or your enemy?
Fire is everybody's enemy. It depends how you use it.
The sound and the fury. The flames and the heat. This is when the firebug is happiest. This is something he's good at.
You got, somebody who's got a lot of problems, and it's the only way to get attention or get their frustration out by lighting a fire.
This firebug knows his trade well, and the devastation fire can cause.
All you have to do is chuck a match into it and just walk away. It will give you about 5 to 10 minutes to get away, and it will go up.
Only recently, this 26-year-old got out of jail after doing time for starting a series of life-threatening fires. As he was charged with starting over a dozen national park fires, he has very definite views on the cause of our latest bushfires.
I reckon about 40% of them deliberately lit, and definitely one in National Park in Southern Shire would have had to been in deliberately lit.
Why are you so sure that the Sutherland National Park fire was deliberately set?
Yes, it was too soon after the publicity on the TVs and of the Grafton fires.
Around Grafton, the fight continues, and the thought that an arsonist was responsible for this and other fires in the area sent anger searing through state bushfire headquarters in Sydney.
The volunteer fireman, Robert Page, was killed when struck by a burning tree, but his widow is left to wonder why he had to die.
The thought that somebody is out there deliberately lighting fires, putting lives at risk, and in this case taking this life, to me, it's premeditated, because they know they're going to cause damage to life and property, and it's murder. That's all I can think, it's murder.
Didn't you stop and think that when you deliberately started a fire, you could kill someone?
No, at that stage, that didn't cross my mind.
Did you realise that the fires that you started could have taken hundreds, even thousands of lives?
I was stupid, but I wasn't, like, I was stupid enough to do it, but I was thinking along the lines as I didn't want it out of control. I just, you know, wanted attention, you could say, you know, but not attention, but, you know, just keep myself busy, occupied.
The person who goes out there and sets the bush alight is a very angry person. His anger is likely to go as far as wanting to hurt others. Now, in his mind is, well, let's burn the bush down, let's burn the suburbs down, and if a few people go as well, well, good-o.
Dr. Jonathan Phillips, a forensic psychiatrist, has given evidence about some of the most notorious arson cases in our country.
Why are so many of these firebugs weedy young punks?
Well, your description is very close to the mark in my experience. Most are young men, most are young men who've never really made it in life. Lighting fires is his moment of getting back at the community, and also brings with it a touch of grandeur for himself, that he's done something which has brought the community to a standstill.
On the worst days of the Sydney Inferno, what most frustrated firefighters was the sheer number of mysterious fires around the suburbs.
When these fires threaten our forests, our homes, and even our lives, it's thousands of unknown faces, firefighters from around the country, who really work themselves into the ground for us. It's only if you've tasted the smoke and choked in the heat day after day that you can imagine how bone-weary they're going to be when this is over. But as well as bone-weary, they'd be sick to the craw if they knew that even in their ranks there are firebugs.
I was in a bushfire brigade for a couple of years before I done those fires.
That's right, this firebug knows the action from both sides. He was a volunteer fireman at the very time he was starting bushfires.
I wasn't getting anywhere in the bushfire brigade situation. I was left out. I had a lot of emotional problems at the time, family problems.
Were you angry? Is that what made you start the fire?
No, it was more hurt and angry. You know, just situation after 6 years in a bushfire service without really getting anywhere.
Have you always been a bit of a loner?
Yes, that's the problem. I've tried not to be, but that's how things work out. You know, it's hard. You know, it's just my nature.
Probably best described as a nobody who wants to be a somebody.
Mitch Parrish was out fighting the latest fires. but it was when he was a senior arson squad detective that he got to know the mind and the methods of this firebug.
I truly believe that the reason he lit the fires was he wanted to get work and go out and chase fires and wanted to be, you know, the hero out in the Bushfire brigade who finds all the fires.
Does he get excited when he starts a fire?
It appears he does get excited, and at times we know he's even lit fires whilst at the fire scene and whilst he's been looking after vehicles.
When you had to come back as a fireman, putting out the fire that you'd started, how did you feel then?
I felt pretty bad, but what can you do without giving myself away? I wish I did back in. I wish I'd just turned myself in.
So he is obsessed. He is compelled to prove himself. And it's unlikely that the firebug will light one fire. That's quite rare. He'll light one fire, he'll succeed. The next fire has to be bigger and better. And so it goes on. So he is extremely dangerous, and that's why I'm saying this is one of the big crimes. This is crime with a capital C.
As dangerous as a serial killer?
In many ways, as dangerous as a serial killer. The serial killer is out there, each time moving on to the next person for very much the same reasons.
Is it easy to get away with it?
It is. It's one of the worst crimes out because it is easy to get away with it. But what can you do? What are you going to do? Put cameras in every little tree you see, hide policemen in every little corner?
The people of Como will never forget how one of their neighbours died here in the most terrible circumstances. A woman trying to protect two small children. The whole community has been traumatised by that one horrible afternoon. It's an eerie coincidence, perhaps, but this is also the neighbourhood of the arsonist, and he was convicted of starting fires not far from here.
This is my friend's place here, what was totally destroyed.
Burnt to the ground,
yes.
all of these houses?
All of these homes, because nobody expected it, and across 7th Street. And that's where the fire started from, and it was spot fired over here, and it just took off like that was the fireball, totally, you know, it was it's a total firestorm.
Could you live with yourself if one of your fires had been responsible for all of that damage?
No, I could not. I'm just lucky that one of my fires wasn't left here. I'm just very lucky. I'm just, you know, I just could not live with myself. And you know, it's just amazing how close it is to, you know, my own home.
Fire's coming up here. 4 bloke guys this house.
This home video shows just how rapidly fire spread from bushland to suburban homes.
See the fire just starting up on his veranda now.
The firebug tells us he hadn't been near the neighbourhood for a week, but he has some thoughts on how the fire started. Do you think this fire, somewhere back down the track, was deliberately started?
My opinion is, and it's not a professional opinion, yes, I do.
Well, as far as arson goes, you're as professional as anyone in the business. Does it look to you like the work of an arsonist?
Yes, it does.
What makes you think that?
Not here, but over at Menai, where it first started from, yes, it does. Because the area it was high, it was dry, there's no way, it was nowhere near road, nowhere near home, there's no way it could have started from the National Park fire. It's just no way.
Why can you be so sure?
Because I've been in the Bushfire Brigade for a number of years, and as you said before, I was convicted of arson. You just get to know, it's a feeling, just where the location was.
So just another flick of that cigarette lighter in a bit of tinder?
Yeah, that's it. It just took off like a fireball.
Is your house on fire? Gone.
2 houses are gone now. We'll get back on when more go.
It appears that the majority of the fires, especially in the Sutherland Shire area, originated from deliberately lit fires.
As fire spread through his area, Mitch Parrish saw a familiar pattern. It's this fella's own backyard. It's his stamping ground. Does that make you suspicious?
Yes, he has been seen in areas south of the park and on the days of fires, and certainly I do suspect he's probably involved with some of these fires here. the area where the fires have been set are some of the identical areas where the fires were set initially, and it wouldn't surprise me if he was involved in some of these fires as well.
I'm surprised at this stage with these bushfires we've had. I'm surprised I haven't had the arson squad on my doorstep because cover myself jail. I have got alibis and I have got witnesses and I am busy, and so I can't be blamed for something I haven't done.
When you say you've got alibis, it's as if you're trying to find excuses.
No, I'm not.
Did you start any of this year's bushfires?
No.
Were you tempted to start any of these fires?
No. I've never been...
When you watched the publicity, did you think about repeating what you've done in the past?
No, only thing what I've thought about when I saw this publicity was trying to get out and help in a way that I can. Not to start and not to light anymore. And I feel sorry for all the people who've lost their homes in here.
The firebug is adamant that he's going straight now, but his fascination with fire remains. During the latest bushfires, the firebug volunteered to help out, and at one stage was actually put on standby. Even though you're an arsonist, you want to go back and fight the fires again?
Yes, because I'm classed as an arsonist, but first an arsonist is a guy who keeps going out lighting fires time after time after time.
Is this a disease that can be cured?
I wish it was a disease that could be cured. It's the experience of those of us who work in forensic psychiatry that an established firebug, someone who's been lighting fires for years, is almost impossible to treat.
If you can't cure them, Dr. Phillips says you should keep firebugs locked up.
I don't think we've got the message across yet that lighting fires is one of the worst crimes there is. It's a crime which is potentially murderous.
Yet the penalties are pretty slight.
The penalties are ridiculous as they stand now. The penalties treat fire lighting as if it's a minor infringement. And of course, this is not what the community wants.
I feel devastated because I've made a mistake in my life. I've done my time for it. I've spent 12 months in jail. Out of that 12 months in jail, that was the worst 12 months of my life. I just want to get on with my life. That's past. You know, if the police want to interview me or question me, by all means. I've got nothing to hide. Now, I've got all these fires deliberately lit or not deliberately lit. That's up to them to decide. Now, I've got a arson hotline. Now, I have to pull out all the resources I can to catch this guy.